Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Doc Talk with Monument Health. My name is Mark Houston, and joining me today is Dr. Andrea Baier and Kaitlyn Schieffer from Monument Health. And today we're going to talk about advanced directives, which I found myself kind of strangely super interested in this topic today because, like a lot of guys maybe, in my sense, my wife takes care of it all, and I don't understand it. So I'm really, really excited to find out what this whole thing's about. So Dr. Baier, we'll start with you. Are you from here?
No, not originally. I grew up in Pennsylvania and D.C., and I lived in Ocean City, Maryland for the last 18 years before I moved here in 2016.
Well, what brings you out from the East Coast and big cities all the way out here?
Just looking for a change in lifestyle. We lived at the ocean for so long. It seemed like it would be cool to live at mountains and be able to hike. And
I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, we're going to move away from the ocean. We're just kind of tired of it a little bit. But you must like to hike around here then and enjoy the hills a little bit.
Yeah, and the lifestyle is very good, and the medical atmosphere is a lot better, I would say, than practicing on the East Coast.
Well, is it just more from a hectic standpoint? Is it a little more laid back in places like this?
It is definitely a little more laid back.
Yeah.
I had some friends that lived in Montana, and I would visit them often, and I was really impressed with their work-life balance.
Okay. Well, you want to be happy where you live when you're doing this kind of work, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
Well, Kaitlyn, what about you?
Yes, I claim the Black Hills as home.
There we go.
Yes,
all right.
I claim them as home, absolutely. So I'm an Air Force kid, but we always kind of landed back here.
Okay.
And it's beautiful. So I just decided to stay once I was all done with school and everything.
Excellent. Now, you're a medical social worker, correct?
I am, yep.
How is that different from just I don't want to say normal social worker, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah. So what I think the big difference is, a lot of social workers go to school for what we call like a generalized practice. So we really kind of learn tips and tricks across all of these different disciplines and different places where we could work. The thing that makes me a medical social worker is truly that I work in the medical field. So I'm really focused on resources and supports within the medical field and those transitions in care as folks' health changes.
Oh, I see. So that really will lead well into what we're going to talk about then, which is, as I mentioned earlier, these advanced directives. Are there types of these directives, or is it kind of generally just under one umbrella?
There are different types. So
Okay.
when we talk about advanced directives,
Yeah.
an umbrella is a good term to use for it, because advanced directive really is just, if I'm not able to communicate what I want for healthcare, then I want this document or this person to speak for me. So there's two different kinds of advanced directives we use most often. One is a durable power of attorney. So that's where you pick somebody to make those decisions for you. And then a living will is a document that you complete, and then your healthcare providers can review that document. So that's kind of how you inform them if you aren't able to tell them yourself.
I know when you go into the doctor and you're checking in a lot of times, they will ask you if you have a living will, if you have those documents. Why is it important to have that question asked?
It's helpful to know who to talk to. So if important decisions need to be made, especially quickly, we want to make sure that we reach out to the right person right away so that we can make the important medical decisions. Also, knowing what the person wants is really helpful, and we can help, if there isn't a designated power of attorney, we can help those people who are helping the patient make the decisions by helping to clarify what they had specified that they wanted when they did the document however many years ago.
Okay, so maybe you kind of answered that, but what happens if I say, no, I don't have any of this information when I check in? What is that? So what are the consequences, I guess, is what I'm asking, of not having this advanced directive?
Well, what happens is the state has a sort of an order that people go in, and so in terms of if you're married, then your spouse automatically is your decision maker.
Oh, right off the bat.
Right off the bat.
Okay.
And if you're not married, then I believe it's adult children but if they don't get along, that can be difficult.
For sure.
And that can cause kind of a stall in medical care because we're waiting for them to sort of get along and agree. So it's really helpful to have it spelled out who you want to make those decisions ahead of time so that we don't look to the wrong people to do that.
So there's definitely a hierarchy then when it comes to if you don't have one already laid out.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a specific stage of life where you should do this? Or is it necessary as soon as you're, I don't know, able to make your own decisions or on your own? Is that kind of when you start with something like this? Maybe 18?
So I encourage folks to think about advanced directives and advanced care planning when they are in good health and when their mind is clear. So that way they're able to really spend some time thinking about some of those things. It can be really difficult to think about, and there's emotion that comes up, which is typically why in the medical world, we have a social worker kind of there available to help answer some of those questions, because it is navigating some of the emotions of, oh gosh, what would that look like? So when people are in good health, when there isn't that urgency, like what Dr. Baier was talking about, where it's like, oh goodness, we need to do something now.
Yeah. So there's no like definitive age. It just should be when you feel like it's, I mean, you could be 15, 16 years old and think, well, maybe I should, if you're 15 or 16-year-olds ever thinking about stuff like that. But if they really are ready and mapping out their future and want to take care of it, it's okay then at that point. They should still do it. Okay. Are there any, like life events too that could prompt, the creation of this or the review of this that you should do?
Yeah, it kind of differs each person to person, right? Just depending on where they're at in their life and their journey, especially with the healthcare journey. But I tend to see it when maybe somebody gets a new diagnosis or somebody's been hospitalized. That tends to be when I see it most often. There's also that opportunity too when people have kids and they're thinking about, estate planning and wills and all of that. Advanced directives can be a part of somebody's will, so that'll be another place where we see it. So those big life events.
Okay, those are when you should think about it for sure. How do you, once you decide you make the decision to do this, how do you ensure that these are legally binding and accessible to you guys? What's the steps there?
Well, usually we get them notarized. We have the patient sign it in front of a notary, although I think recently it was changed that there can be 2 witnesses. Is that right?
So you don't need a notary then, just the 2 witnesses?
Correct.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then it's really important to get them on file, both with your doctor and at the hospital, so that you're not trying to dig through a filing cabinet when things are in an emergency situation.
So you can get them as soon as they're ready to go. You can send them to Monument Health, or how do people get them to you once they're ready to go?
I usually recommend that they take it to their next appointment with their doctor, and they can scan them in and give them back the original copy, and then it's in the system hopefully forever.
Right. Oh, that makes perfect sense then. Get it ready and get it out there. When it comes to the family members and the healthcare proxies, what kind of role do they play in executing these? So let's say it needs to kick in. What is the family member's role, or that, like I said, that proxy? What happens then when that needs to start?
So in that situation, that family member is point of contact for all medical decision making. That would also be too where, if we needed to have a conversation about, what do we do next? What interventions are we going to do? But that also allows other folks outside of the providers to communicate directly with that family member. So me, myself, that would be my point of contact for planning. What do we do when this person maybe leaves the hospital, or when they're feeling better? What do those plans look like? That's the only person that I can get a hold of too as part of care planning.
How detailed are these directives? Do they get pretty? Are they hard to put together? Maybe that's the question I want to ask.
I think that's that kind of varies too from what I've seen.
Really?
I've seen some pretty basic ones where it's like, in the event that I'm unable to speak for myself, I select so-and-so to be that person for me, and then that's it. I've also seen some too that are pages long. So it kind of depends on what folks want. I think that's some of the beauty with advanced directives is you can make it as simple or as detailed as what works for you in your life.
Okay. Yeah, that was my next question then. There isn't just a standard form. you get to kind of map out what's best for you then, in that sense.
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Just a short, well, if I can't talk, this is who you talk to, sign my name, I'm done. And that's probably the easiest way to do some of these. When they get super detailed, excuse me, can you give me some of the examples maybe of like what are in some of these really detailed ones? Can you think of what those would be off the top of your head? Because now I'm super interested.
It typically, and I'm, you might have more experience with some of this with looking over these. I typically see it when it comes to like specific interventions. So if I'm unable to eat for myself, if I'm unable to drink, if my lungs aren't going to work on their own, those kinds of things, I've seen them where they draw out each one of those. I would want this if this were to happen. And if that doesn't work, then I want this.
So does this, because one of the big ones I think is the do not resuscitate that a lot of people will recommend. How common is that?
It's really common.
Is it really?
Yeah. And everybody who's admitted to the hospital should be asked that question.
Oh, really?
Yeah, everybody, every single person should be asked that question. It's actually an order that gets entered into the computer at the time of admission. But it's really important to know, and what's really important for patients to know is that do not resuscitate doesn't mean that we stop treating you. It just means we do everything up into the extreme case where your heart stops beating or you stop breathing. Then we let you, pass naturally, making sure the person is comfortable. But it's only in that extreme case.
Okay.
Up to that, you can have surgery, antibiotics, anything that you need to try to prolong your life.
Is it hard as a doctor to not still want to? I mean, you have the order, you can't do it. Is it hard as a doctor, because it seems that goes against everything you've trained for, right? Does that get kind of difficult to not want to try?
Not often.
Okay.
Usually people who choose that have lived a good life.
Yeah.
The quality of their life is not something they want to sustain right now. And so you can understand, kind of the origin of why they chose that. There have been a few cases where you think, gosh, they could really be okay if we did these things, but you have to respect their wishes.
Now, I've seen people that have actually tattooed that on themselves. Is that legally binding? I mean, is that, if somebody has like right across their chest, DNR, does that matter to you guys or not?
No, I don't think it counts.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if we had to look to a family member to make decisions, we might point it out, but it wouldn't be legally binding.
So don't waste your hard-earned tattoo money on something like that, because it's not going to work. So where's like the first step? Where would you send people to get started in the process of getting one of these directives?
So there's a variety of different ways they can get it started. That's kind of the nice thing. So we over at Monument Health at the hospital have just kind of some very basic templates. That's kind of nice to be able to look at, to start to think about it. And that's the thing I always encourage folks to start with. Don't feel like you need to put something on paper right away. Think about what you would want. And then if you're wanting to pick somebody to speak for you, if you aren't able to, then have the conversations with them. And then that's when you start to put stuff on paper. But yes, we have some basic templates at Monument Health. You can also look online. Another avenue that folks take is just going and sitting down and doing legacy planning and estate planning and sitting down with a lawyer, drawing up a will.
Okay.
All of those pieces.
And then all of that just kind of falls to, and then just make sure you get it to the hospital. So you guys have it on file and you're not constantly bringing in stacks of paperwork with you, I suppose, too. All right. Well, I hope we've pointed some people in the right direction with this. I do think it is very important to have something like this with people you trust. I mean, that has to be the most important thing I think you guys would both recommend, for sure. Don't just put down some coworker that you kind of know, to make those decisions for you, for sure. Dr. Andrea Baier and medical social worker Kaitlyn Schieffer, thank you for coming in and talking about this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.